Science wins in Australian court. Kathleen Folbigg pardoned. But is it sufficient? Hi friends, I am Edwin Williams, EJW Science Research. I am so happy for her, says geneticist Carola Vinuesa of Francis Crick Institute in London, who sequenced Folbigg's genome and the genome of her deceased children. She identified mutations in a gene called carmudulin 2 in Folbigg's genome as well as in those of her two daughters, which could have explained the girl's death. Researchers and legal experts applaud the role of Carola Vinuesa, an independent scientific advisor in the Australian judicial inquiry that led to the pardon and release of Kathleen Folbigg, who was falsely imprisoned for 40 years in 2003. The mother was declared the worst serial killer for the death of her 4 young children. I had presented 2 videos about this in a few months back. The Governor of New South Wales pardoned her on June 5th, 2023, after a new inquiry concluded that there was reasonable doubt as to the guilt of Ms. Folbigg for each of the offences for which she was originally tried. Science was heard in this case, says Michael Toft-Overgaard, a protein scientist at Aalborg University in Denmark, who was an expert witness in this inquiry. Genetic evidence not available at the time of Folbigg's conviction revealed that rare mutation in the protein carmudulin 2 could have caused the death of her 2 daughters, and a neurogenetic disorder could have led to the death of one of her sons. Carmudulin controls calcium concentration in cells and, among other roles, help to regulate the heart's contractions. That evidence was not enough to convince the commissioner of the first inquiry and upheld Folbigg's conviction. The mother was punished without reasonable reason, and the judge shamefully relied on a British pediatrician's ill-conceived notion that 1 sudden death of infant is a tragedy, 2 is suspicious, and 3rd is a murder unless otherwise proved, which was cited by the prosecution for its psychedelic effect that hoodwinked the jury, and the judge believed it and awarded punishment of 40 years for the mother. Dr. Vinuesa and the Australian Academy of Science petitioned the Governor of New South Wales to grant pardon to Folbigg based on subsequent work by Dr. Overgaard and others that showed how the mutations impaired protein function. Australian Academy of Science recommended scientific expert witness and put forward about 30 researchers, most of whom presented evidence at the inquiry. The inquiry heard the most up-to-date science from the most qualified scientists wherever they were in the world. The expert witnesses were independent and were available to both prosecution and the defense for interrogation. Cardiologist Peter Schwartz at the Italian Oncological Institute in Milan and a world leader in carmudulin mutation was one of the expert witnesses. He has advised on nearly 40 medico-legal cases, mostly in the United States. This case demonstrated how the science and justice systems can work together, and that it should prompt law reforms to create a more science sensitive legal system. I hope they succeed, says Dr. Overgaard, so that experts with scientific specific knowledge relevant to the case are called. Hugh Watkins, a cardiologist at the University of Oxford, UK, who studies genes that cause sudden cardiac death, says it really does come down to the legal assessment of whether that residual uncertainty leaves you. Wrongful convictions have been going on for a long time, yet the machinery to deal with them and the determination of compensation remains painfully dated arbitrarily and inconsistent. Can the amount of compensation make up for the vilification as the hated most hated women in Australia and the deprivation of Folbigg's liberty spent entirely in time wrap of maximum security prisons, says Dr. Richard Auckland, publisher of the New Journal of Justinian and the Gazette of Law and Journalism and legal practitioner to the Supreme Court of NSW, that is New South Wales, Australia.